Who makes the decision? That's what I'd like to know.
We tend to make a recommendation to staff based on engineering reasons. The grade doesn't work, the driveway doesn't drain, or if it's cracked where we can't actually construct a replacement apron. That's when we would make a recommendation to go farther than the 2 feet for those type of engineering reasons. Cosmetically, we don't normally do any more. If it's pitted, we tend not to, that doesn't usually factor in to our decision-making process. We usually look at the grades and can this be built without going farther back? And
Or
we
if
would
it's not cracked dramatically.
Right, yeah, right. If we can install the form board and we can actually butt up against a piece of good concrete, that's usually as far as we go. We make that recommendation to staff, and that's what's included in the bidding documents typically. But there are exceptions, obviously.
I'll come back. Mr. Coles?
All right, if you're cutting into to cut out a piece of cement out of a guy's driveway, and that cement you're gonna put in is a different color than the other one, that makes his driveway look like baloney. And you don't take the whole square, you only take part of it. That's no way to do a job. If you're gonna do it, you take the whole section out and put a whole new section in. I've seen that done too. Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I mean, the bottom line is this boils down to an aesthetic issue. Do we want to spend the dollars within our CIP to improve the aesthetic issue of something like this? I was on the front line on this a lot this summer. We did have a lot of complaints. There were a lot of people that were unhappy. It does look bad, but the council has to weigh whether or not they think it looks bad enough to spend that extra dollars within the CIP. But putting myself in a resident's shoes, I could see how they wouldn't like it, especially if you just put in a new driveway. I mean, that would be the worst case scenario. You just spent all that money. It looks nice, and then we come in there. Granted, we're improving our infrastructure, and it is our, material, it is our apron, but it does look bad. It does.
Mayor, please.
Just curious if it would even be an option, especially on the blacktops. I mean, if we cut into them, if we at least seal coated them all black so that it would be all the same, look the same color anyways. Is that even an option? I'm not even sure how good that would look, but it would be the same color.
Yeah, that's an option. It's something that we could consider going up to basically the right-of-way line with getting them all the same color. The concrete's really hard to match because
Right.
you get the difference in colors really from age and oxidation, so it's really hard to match, and you can't really seal coat the concrete. But asphalt, maybe there's that option.
And then if a resident is planning on doing his driveway, maybe the building department can take a look at our CIP, and if it's coming up next year, maybe we can say, hey, next year we may be coming in and cutting into your driveway, or in 2 years. Some type of assistance to help out the situation.
Christine Wenger?
I thought at one time in the past, or something to consider for now in the future, would be that if the resident needs that curbing done and it's in front of their driveway, that we would do the work and even the 2 foot into it, but the resident could have the option of adding on the service of doing the entire apron or their entire driveway for a fee from the resident. So is it possible to set up a system like that? I know it's a little more detailed when you're accommodating each resident, but that might be an option as well.
Yeah, some of the towns I serve, they will take the lead and reach out to the residents on a project and accumulate all those resident requested driveways and sort of work out that with the contractor on the road program. That is one way to do it, probably the way the contractor would prefer, because they have the city behind it that way.
Yeah.
Other towns will just have the residents work individually with the contractor, and sometimes they want to do work on private property, for instance. Typically, the cities do not get involved with work on private property, but within the apron itself, within the right-of-way, I do have some communities who do set up a program for residential driveway apron replacement, yes. It can be done.
Okay, thank you.
Rosaro? Good.
400,000 sounds like a lot of money to me. How many driveways did we actually do?
You know, I think we ended up replacing, oh, man. It had to be in the area of about 100 to 200 driveways, perhaps. I mean, spot repairs. It was about over 100 driveway aprons. Probably more even, yeah.
So what would this, or what did it cost us then?
Well,
To-
just
to
the 2
this.
foot?
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't have that number with me right now, but when we've done estimates for the CIP, we've basically estimated, you know, a certain percentage of driveways at a 2-foot width. When you start to weigh, trying to add in the extra aprons, then we'd have to refigure our estimates for future road programs in the CIP, I guess. That's the issue, and if the budget doesn't change, then you'd have to look at doing less roads per year.
okay, I mean, between 100 and 200, that's a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if we can get a better number on how many driveways that we did, and what we're talking about, 400,000 extra for that, again, 400,000 is a lot of money.
Okay.
My other question would be, out of these maybe 100 to 200, how many, and I know, Jeff, you said you're on the front line, and I'm concerned about resident complaints as well as you are. How many do you think we actually got? Did we get 10%, 20%?
I'd say at least 15%.
15%.
That's the minimum number would be 15%.
And they were all asking to have the apron completely done?
Well, they weren't asking, they were yelling at me.
Okay. So in their own way, they were asking you to have their apron completely done?
Yes.
Okay.
What I could do, the next road program the city has on our CIP that would affect this question is the one, not Royal Oaks, which is a reconstruction project, but the following year, the city has a large resurfacing program again. We could estimate the cost difference between the two options and bring that back to you so you could see what the difference in cost would be between 2-foot replacement and full apron replacement.
I got one question then. Now, how did you come up with a $400,000 figure?
Looking at the aprons of this year's program, the 2012 program, if we were to replace the full apron versus the 2-foot we did, that's the difference in cost. It would have been an extra $400,000 to replace all those aprons.
Okay, I'm confused.
Okay.
If you know that number, then how do we not know the number of how many we actually replaced?
I just don't know it off the top of my head, sir.
Oh.
I mean,
Okay,
we have it back at the office.
all right. Well, that's an important number for me, if you can get that.
Sure.
And then you're saying it cost 400,000, so how much did it actually cost us? And how many driveways did we actually cut into?
I can get you those numbers.
Okay.
We've got that,
All right, thank you.
sure.
Mr. Woods?
I also received quite a few calls, and I just passed them on to Jeff. I'm a nice guy. Excuse me. Of that, the biggest complaint I got was not so much that they cut into their driveway, but people who, let's say, don't take care of their house as nice as some other people and let their stuff fall apart, inadvertently got their driveways replaced completely because they were so deteriorated that there's no way to tie in a partial with new stuff. So, rubbing salt into the wound, I replaced mine, you cut it and made it look ugly, and my neighbor who hasn't done anything on his house in 20 years now has a new driveway for nothing.
Alderman? Oh, go ahead.
Alderman Woods is correct. That was a big percentage of the complaints where, you know, you've got a garbage-looking driveway, garbage-looking apron, and we can't actually do the 2-foot because it's so in such poor condition that, no, you get a brand new one because it's so bad. When somebody's trying to keep up their property, they're not getting rewarded. They're almost getting punished. So that compounded the yelling.
Alderman Roy Wesley, do round 2 here.
Okay. We sit up here and talk about beautification of Wooddale and everything else, and, you know, again, we're the ones doing the damage to the apron a lot of times with the salt and stuff. I have a problem here. I've seen the city do some work where where cities cut into the driveway, and all they do, they come by and just pour concrete right in. So now you got concrete in, and you got, say you cut the thing in down the 2-foot part, they don't put cold joints in. So what happens? It shifts. So now I got an apron. I got new part here, and my old part's sinking because you didn't put cold joints in. If we're going to do the 2-foot, then we're going to change the policy here for putting cold joints in. And that's going to be an extra cost. I don't know what the difference is on that. I'm not an engineer. Maybe he could answer that question, but that's an extra cost on doing that too, because it's not fair. It's not fair to these residents that we're coming in and doing the streets. And I understand what Alderman Woods was saying. But again, it is our property. And it's coming out of motor fuel tax.
Go
We can
ahead.
get back to you with the cost of the expansion joint material for these type of 2-foot replacements as well with the additional costs that Alderman Lazar asked for.
Okay.
But could you address my question on the cold joints?
He's going to get back. with
Yeah,
us.
Well, he said expansion joints. That's different.
just the cold joint too? Okay, we'll get the cold joint as
I
well,
mean,
sir. Yeah.
those are two separate things.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Alderman Shore.
I hate to extend this out longer, but there are people also that don't want the regular curb. They want their driveway to come down smoothly. And the city did some. They replaced the apron and came down, and it's without a curb. What if more people want that? What's the difference? And what I would like to know, I have it myself, is that going to hurt the water system removal? The water's going down to the sewers. I don't, no idea.
Go ahead.
I serve one community who, by policy, replaces all their aprons, and what they do is they also depress all the curbs, just as you're speaking of. That's their policy, is that when they come upon the apron at the subdivision built with the rolled curb for 3 inches, they replace that curb and replace it with an 1.5 inch depressed curb and replace the whole apron. That's what they do by policy. That's the one community I serve that does replace all the aprons by policy. So I think those go hand in hand. If you were gonna do that, you would replace the curbs and make them all depressed. It does not tremendously affect the water carrying capacity. I mean, it's only an 1.5 inch difference, and typically the apron is moving downwards, so you can carry that water across. So that would be probably part of your policy as well. You'd just replace the curb, depress the driveway apron, and replace the apron if you wanted to make that, go to that change. Yes.
Personally, I think we should be doing that on all the jobs where we're replacing curbs. And take into account it's going to cost more, so we know we have to do less amount perhaps. Thank you.
Joe, you have any more?
No.
Go around.
Change my mind.
Oh, the mayor.
Mayor?
Lou, the street resurfacing is about $1 million, right? This is what we do. When we do a road resurfacing, it's close to $1 million, a little more.
I think it was in the past, Mayor. This year was 2, and I think the future program, I think for 2014 was over $1 million as well. It was. Yeah, so yeah, you're actually stepping up the amount of road work you're doing.
Well, I'm
with
just
the
talking about the resurfacing, not the full reconstruction.
2014 program, I think, is over $1 million as well.
No, I think it's less.
Is it?
Yeah, I think it's
Oh,
less.
okay, because of Royal Oaks, it'll be. okay.
214 is
So about $1
less
million,
going on
yeah.
projects.
Last year was 2, though.
Right, so basically 25, 30% if we start. And I'll be honest with you, I've got 2 years, I think 2 years ago was on Edgewood. I'm just getting complaints left and right. This year I know was Paramount, and that looked terrible. Question, when some of these people that are putting in the new driveways, for instance, and basically, if I'm understanding right, if while they're putting in the driveway, if the curb gets redone, then we wouldn't do it. I don't know, is that something that maybe we're approached as they want to do it, we do the curb right then and there when they're putting in their new driveway, and we don't have to cut their driveway, those new driveways.
You
Go
know,
ahead.
the town where I used to live, the program they had there, they would ask each of the residents beforehand what they wanted, and they had sort of a cost sharing going on with the village. The village would actually do their policy, which was 4 feet, and if the resident wanted additional, then they would say they wanted to do it before the job was put out for bid. And basically, that's how they were able to do it. So there's a couple ways we could come up with a system, depending on how the city wanted to handle this. But you could do it ahead of time and know what you wanted before you bid it out that way.
Well, I'm talking about the residents, like we had a few, and you can see it. The guys who put in their new driveways, it might have been a year, 2 years, maybe not even. And we came in and cut it.
Yeah.
But if they would have came, well, naturally they have to come to us for the permits. We send somebody out, that curb needs to be done. Maybe we do it right then and there, so we don't have to cut into their driveway next time,
That's a good point,
if
Mayor.
we're gonna be working there.
We can coordinate that with the building department, perhaps. That's a good point.
How much is it gonna cost to 20 feet of curb?
Okay. Christine Winger.
I'll give 'em a chance.
Jeff, you care to comment on that?
I just see that being a little logistically difficult to pull that off personally.
For
I
one
think it's going to
curb?
be a pain.
For one curb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One curb here, one curb there.
I mean, if you're in,
It's
if
going to
that's,
end up costing us more money.
if that street's under construction, then it's a different ballgame, but to do one curb, we are going to scatter all over because we don't replace curbs in one area. We mainly replace, go ahead.
Basically, the resident would put the curb in while they're putting in their driveway, and let's face it, we know how much it would cost, and this is what we would offer. And again, I don't know if it's a good option. I don't know how it would work, but
We would have to really look at that. Okay, Christine Winger?
Thank you. So when we have our follow-on conversation, I would like to see how the communities do it that involve the residents, and there is that decision of cost share. So let's say we do our 2 feet from the curb, then what are the decisions that the resident is involved in, and how do they pay for their portion? I think that'll take away a lot of the negative feedback that we've been getting as well, if there's the involvement from the residents. So I certainly would like to see something on
I'll
that.
provide some examples.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. I think so.
Mr. Woods?
I just want to follow up, but the apron is not as simple as everybody makes it to be. It sounds nice that we give them the apron, but then we're doing the sidewalk, then we cut into the driveway, and next thing you know, we're at the guy's garage. So it always becomes a question of where do we stop? So 2 foot isn't just 2 foot going to 5, 7, 10 feet. It's possibly going all the way to the guy's garage, because there are no joints to cut at, or the thing's sloped and broken up. That's the big issue. So I think if some of the things that Alderman Winger brought up, let's take a look at some of those programs. Certainly, we know when we're going to do these jobs, and that information could go out a year and a half earlier. Not that it's really going to do any good, because everybody, like many notices sent out that early, get thrown in the garbage. I don't have to worry about it. But maybe if we just look a little harder and try to develop something and make it uniform, that'll help us out next year.
Yeah, I think we can wrap this up. We've got a lot of good direction, and we've got a lot of time too, because next year's Royal Oak, so we've got
Okay.
some time to figure this out.
So my recommendation that I'm gonna make to proceed, staff's got their directions, to come back with some info. I will ask staff to put that back on the Public Works agenda once all the info comes forward with all the prices and everything else, and what you asked for and what everyone asked for. So I don't have to make a motion on that, I don't think, do I? You got direction, so that will be my direction, to come back and revisit that. Committee's direction to Alderman Sharp.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but what are we gonna do with these people who don't want sidewalks? They want a curb but no sidewalk. They've got a gravel driveway or whatever it is, and we're gonna put in a curb, and it's gonna be higher than the driveway. mean, this sounds kind of ridiculous,
Well, I don't.
putting curbs when they don't have sidewalks and a driveway. What are we gonna do there?
I mean, I just don't know what streets those are that don't have curbs now, or
The ones where they voted not to have,
we're going to get into that Royal Oaks.
Sidewalks.
We haven't got that far yet.
okay.
I mean, it's a Royal Oaks discussion. So. All right, so you get your direction, right? All right. Okay, we'll do, she needs, right? I will go to the item number 5, the Royal Oaks Engineering. Who's taking the lead on that one?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was here a couple weeks ago. We presented the Royal Oaks subdivision improvements, went through our preliminary study, and looked for direction to proceed with Phase 2 engineering. At last week's council, there was a little bit of discussion regarding the drainage, whether we have an urban cross-section or a rural cross-section. And so I was asked to come back tonight so we could further that discussion on how the drainage would work. First of all, I have an exhibit here just to make sure we're clear what we're talking about here. An urban versus a rural cross-section. On the left is what I'm referring to as an urban cross-section with a curb and gutter system that's going to collect the street stormwater drainage and then into inlets and storm sewer. On the right is a rural cross-section where if we went with a rural cross-section, we would still install a concrete ribbon shoulder, and that would help to hold the road together. But we would rely on ditches or probably more likely shallow swales in this neighborhood to collect the stormwater. And then in those swales, we would have structures in between the driveways to collect the stormwater. Just to be clear, I know there was some discussion about filling in ditches and do we really want to do that considering that there's some drainage problems out there. But just to be clear, a lot of the ditches out there are already filled in, have been filled in over the years. And so what this map shows here is in yellow, those are the existing ditches that will be maintained. In the pink are the ones to be filled in, and then the blue ones are the new proposed ditches for storage. As we discussed last week, we are going to be filling in some ditches,
Excuse
but
me, where's pink?
magenta, sorry.
Okay.
So as we talked about a couple weeks ago, we're going to strategically maintain some ditches, particularly in the low points, to provide some additional storage so that when the storm sewers overflow, they overflow out of the structures in the low point, and that's where we'll strategically keep those ditches in place, or in some cases, construct new ones. So basically what we're comparing, if we want to look at, okay, how much storage are we losing by filling in the ditches, really you would compare the magenta to the blue, and it's about the same. So what we're proposing as far as ditches, we're really not taking away much storage from what's out there right now. So the larger question would be, would we want to add on to that and install ditches or swales throughout the entire subdivision? I have some pictures here. I just want to go through some of the more challenging areas which led us to the decision why we thought curbs and gutters would be better in this area. As you know, it's a narrow right-of-way through there. There's a lot of elaborate landscaping in some cases that would dramatically be disturbed if we put ditches or swales in. Here's a case here too in the corner. To cut in a ditch or a swale, we would have to remove a lot, if not all of that landscaping, and then you could possibly start getting into the root system of a tree like that too. Another example, similar thing with the trees close to the road. And then here's a relatively steep parkway that this would result in a pretty steep side slope on the ditch. Here's an excerpt from the resident survey that we sent out. I didn't put the entire letter in there, but I just put the part that pertains to the curb and gutter, where we explain to the residents what we're talking about with the curb and gutter. Similarly, the installation of curb and gutter is being considered on both sides of all streets along the edges of the pavement. If curb and gutter is installed, most, if not all, of the ditches, culverts, and drainage structures that currently exist in the parkways would be eliminated. Stormwater would be collected in structures along the curb and conveyed via underground sewer. If curb and gutter is not installed, stormwater drainage would continue to be managed by ditches, culverts, and drainage structures in the parkway. In both cases, the drainage will be improved from its existing condition. A drainage study is currently underway to determine the impacts of both drainage options on the existing pond. So then the question was posed to the residents: are you in favor of installing curb and gutter along the road edge in lieu of parkway drainage? And you can see the results. 39 in favor of the curb and gutter and 13 opposed.
Alderman Roy Wesley.
How many surveys is that all the surveys?
Yeah, this is all that we received back
How many were sent out?
to every resident. Do we know how many that was?
There's over 100
I-
in there, isn't there?
Maybe 125?
That's not even 50%. That's, I think someone needs to go knocking on some doors. Is that how the survey was done, by knocking on doors or mail, or,
It was mailed out.
well, okay, and the two aldermen from First Ward's here, so let them speak on it.
I, Frank Rozzaro.
I did last week knock on some doors after we were talking about the swales versus the curbs and the gutters. Not, again, I didn't hit all 125, but the people that I did speak to that were home, it's pretty much what we've been saying all along. Everyone is just concerned about it staying rural looking. As far as the swales, the majority of the people that I spoke to rather not have the swales. They'd rather have the gutters and the curbs. They were concerned about the size of the curb. Kind of funny because not a lot of them realized that there were options as far as sizes. When I explained to them that there were, they pretty much were looking for the smaller curbs. No sidewalks, as we've always stated. What I see and what I hear about through the community, curbs and gutters.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt here. First of all, when we do the curbs and curbs, I don't think there's always been in a questionnaire on a survey what type of curbs. There's only been one curb. So where do we come up with the discussion now, there's two types of curbs? I understand, but that was because emergency vehicle asked for that in that part. That was to address the concern about emergency vehicle. But this council has not adopted that we're going to do these streets and do a survey and ask them what type of curbs. Because I will tell you that right now, we just reconstructed a street on Stoneham, and we didn't knock on those doors and ask them what type of curb they wanted.
I didn't ask about the curbs.
Well, you just said, you just made, right, the size, but we didn't ask that on Stoneham, so I'm a little confused on curbs here and that, because the only reason why we did Deer Path that way is too, because it was a cost share with DePage County, okay, so that was a project that was joined together. The other thing is, it was asked by the fire department because it was such a narrow street that they needed more access to get off the road. Now, my question is, I'm a little confused here. In that survey that was handed out, did we make a comment on what size curbs or what type of curbs? No, so I just don't know where that came about. I just don't know.
I'll give you an answer.
Go ahead.
if you want. Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, it was last week when I heard that we had options for different sizes. Now, I didn't know if that was an issue as far as having different sizes, but the people that I talked to, I just had them be aware of the fact that there are sizes. Now, are we gonna give them the option? I didn't say we were.
Well, okay, you did the presentation, did we talk about that?
We didn't talk about the different types of curbs in the presentation. We talked a little bit before the meet. It was always, I think, going to be a barrier type of curb, but we did talk, well, is it for sure going to be a 6-inch high curb? And we talked, well, it's going to depend on when we go through the design and look at the cross sections. Maybe a B412 curb, a 4-inch high head rather than a 6-inch high. Maybe that works better from an engineering perspective. But I don't know that we ever discussed, a resident option of what type of curb that would be installed. It was purely from an engineering standpoint of which one might work better.
So that was discussed at the meeting? Or was that off?
No, that was outside of the meeting.
Okay. Mr. Woods?
Thank you. I have an issue with the first part of that paragraph. Similarly, curb and gutter being considered on both sides of all streets along the edges of pavement. If curb and gutter is installed, most, if not all, the ditches and culverts and drainage structures are current, most of all exist in the parkways would be eliminated. Okay. But on the prior diagram that you had, you made the statement that really the amount's staying the same. If I'm reading the paragraph and I'm a resident there, I'm going to be believing that the culverts are gone completely, and that's really not the case. That paragraph's kind of misleading, I would think.
Yeah, you're right. The survey did go out before we were this far along into the design, where it became apparent, when we got through the drainage study, it became apparent that we should, and we talked about this at the meeting as well, that we should really try to maximize the storage available in the parkways that we can. And so that's when we did decide to strategically add some ditches that are out there right now.
You have a follow-up?
Alderman Roy Wesley.
So you do a design like this, and then we send a survey. This design was done after the survey.
We were working through the design before the survey. We didn't contemplate or anticipate at the time that we might want to preserve some ditches, and we don't have to. We don't have to preserve ditches. That was some direction from the council that would be a good idea.
So, okay. So the carriage is coming before the horse on this. That's how I'm understanding this. Okay.
Mr.
Because I
Coles.
don't think your survey's correct then.
Mr. Coles.
All right, there's some places that you can't put a ditch in, because the houses are so close to the street, and they've got so much, landscaping that the landscaping's almost on the street, so you can't put a ditch in some spot. So they gotta go with some sort of a curb, but, some of the people that I talked to only wanted a flat curb, just to hold the road together. So, and they wanted to leave the water run into the street, into the sewers, but they didn't want the curb up so high that all they wanted to do is protect the street from falling apart. Because what happens to them is the edges of the street keep breaking off as people drive. And that's one of the problems that we have. On Norwood, up on top, the top street there, that street is so low that I don't know what they're gonna do on that, because that floods all the time. Now, I don't know what they're gonna do with that street as far as the road's concerned. Because if you build a road up higher, you'll be flooding the people out anyway. And if you build a road lower, you're gonna flood the road. So you have a problem up on the north end of that street, or the west end of that street. I don't know how you're gonna work it. That's up to you guys, you're the engineers. Okay,
You done?
yeah.
Mr. Woods?
I think we're getting a little sidetracked here. I'm getting lost. What are we supposed to decide this evening? I mean, it sounds like we're kind of all over the board now.
I've just got a couple more slides, so if you wouldn't mind, we'll just
Okay.
finish the
Try
presentation.
to reel
and
us
then
back
kind-
in and.
Yeah, yeah. But like I said, the reason we are here is really to decide whether we want an urban curb and gutter, or urban section with curbs and gutters and storm sewer that will collect the water a lot better than what it is right now, or do we want to go with more of a rural section and collect the stormwater through ditches and swales and culverts and structures in the parkway? Just want to point out here, you know, we talked about some different improvements, and I put this slide together just to kind of give everyone a feeling for the value of some of these improvements that we talked about as far as water storage. We talked about lowering the normal water elevation of the pond 12 to 18 inches. That's going to create between 1.8 and 2.7 acre feet of storage. An acre foot of storage, in case you don't know, is an acre 1 foot deep of storage for water. So you can see lowering that normal water elevation of the pond is very significant. That provides a lot of storage, and as we talked about, a relatively low cost. I just want to get ahead one slide just to make sure we can all visualize, because I know there was some question last time about how exactly does that work. On the north side of the pond, there is an existing manhole, and the lightly green colored pipes are the existing pipes out there. The one on the pond side, that's the existing pond outlet. So when the pond rises to that level, the water drains out the pipe, and then it drains up to the north to that northern basin. And so what we talked about is there's an opportunity, because there's an elevation difference between those two pipes and the manhole, there's an opportunity to drop that pipe 12 to 18 inches. And that will lower the pond, the normal water level elevation of the pond, and then it will create additional storage. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about lowering the pond. Then there's some other options. Installing an open graded large stone subbase. This is a newer idea that was generated when I spoke with Alderman Woods about some possible permeable pavement. We think permeable pavement is going to be cost prohibitive, but this has some features of a permeable pavement where we would have some larger stone open graded, and then we would allow the storm sewer to back up into that road base. We still want to do a little bit more work on that before we're ready to say that that's a good option or not. We talked about oversizing the storm sewer for about $80,000. That will provide approximately 0.15 acre feet. Not nearly as much of an impact as lowering the pond, but remember, when we talk about oversizing the storm sewer, we're talking about the water in the residential area before it gets to the pond. So a place for that water to be in the pipes rather than on the roads and in the ditches. And then installing shallow swales and parkway inlets throughout the entire subdivision, which is part of the reason why we are here tonight to discuss that, just to give a relative idea of how much additional storage that would be, about 0.25 acre feet of storage at a relatively high cost. And the reason for that higher cost is because we've got some extra excavation to cut in those swales. And then if we put the swales in, now we're going to need some structures in between all of the driveways to collect that water. Because as you saw from a lot of those pictures, I don't think we really want to cut in deep ditches and culverts and disturb a lot of the parkway and landscaping out there. So that's why the cost is significant to install some of those swales. So, just to reiterate, that's the issue at hand. Do we want to install curbs and gutters, or do we want to install shallow swales throughout the subdivision?
Okay, so let's go back to the curbs. So what I'm hearing up here now is that every street we redo now, we're going to send a survey out asking the people what type, you're setting precedents here, and don't tell me we aren't, because we are. We're going to ask every resident when we do a street now, what type of gutters, curbs they want. Because here's the thing I see now. First off, with the curbs, I got a feeling we'll be replacing a lot more front yards with the snow plows, because if you go to flatter curbs, okay, I'm not saying our snow plow people are experts, but we're gonna end up digging up some front yards with the snow plows with the curb.
Don't we do that now?
Well, we don't dig up as many, but I'm just saying that we may have a problem there. The thing is, I don't care what curbs or gutters go up there, I really don't, but the point is, you're setting precedents that a residence in that subdivision is going to decide what types of curb and gutters. Okay? So my question is, when we do street repairs, then we might well put in the questionnaire, what type of gutters, curbs you want in. Go ahead.
Real quick. Our recommendation, just to be clear, would be to install the city standard curb, which is a B612 curb and gutter, unless there's an engineering reason to change it.
And what, I don't know. what-
The engineering reason would be if
Oh,
we,
I don't
if
know
we,
what size of the,
oh, so a 6-inch high gutter height or curb height, and then with a 12-inch gutter flag that would collect the stormwater.
okay. Mayor?
The survey was for curb and gutter, because there is no curbs there. So as far as setting precedents, a lot of the places where we already work, there's curbs there. That's why the question was posed. As far as the 4-inch or 6-inch curb, being that that's sort of a tight street, little narrow like Deer Path was, the conversation was after the meeting real quick. I'm like, why the taller curb? If Deer Path, I was told it was a narrow street and we went to 4-inch, why wouldn't we look at 4-inch here? And that's where the 4-inch came about. And I think at that time you said 4-inch might even be cheaper because naturally it's less concrete. Was that correct?
4-inch could potentially be a little bit cheaper, but
Not really.
probably not a whole lot because the labor is the same and it's really about the same cost.
But as far as the survey, there's no curbs there. Are we gonna put full swales in all the way through, which the map showed some are gonna remain, some need to be taken out, and maybe, and that, what was added was very insignificant. So, I mean, it's not like we're redoing the whole subdivision, correct?
No, there were really just two main areas that we were adding ditches where they currently don't exist.
So, what are we going to decide? Oh, I'm sorry. So are you looking for directions, what type of curbs, what type of gutters? Are we looking to approve your swale thing?
Yeah. I think our recommendation, sir, is to use curb and gutter out there. We think it's going to do a better job for the drainage. It's what the bulk of the residents who did respond to the survey want. We'd like to design it with curb and gutter and storm sewer. We are going to have some areas with swales for storage, but we're just seeking your concurrence on that plan of attack, and then we will provide the final design on the job with that plan of attack. We would design it with the city standard curb.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'd like to make that motion to do the curbs and gutters with recommended curb size.
Okay, sir.
And I'd also like to have you look at option 1 and 3.
Okay.
What was one?
And 3 in the oversized storm sewer.
That's in there already.
It's already in there.
Yep.
That's already in there.
Right.
Okay, well, that is my motion.
Do I have a second on motion? All right, question. Mr. Woods?
My concern is that maybe the residents' expectations are a little different, given the information that I've heard. The low number of respondents, I know that there's not a lot that we can do, and it's certainly nice that Mr. Lazara went around and talked to some of the people, but there's gonna be culverts, not gonna be, in both scenarios. I mean, you can see the turmoil we have with cutting 2 feet of driveway. We're gonna go into an area and drastically change it. I'm just glad that all those calls go to Frank. Thanks.
Okay.
We did have one public meeting regarding this after the survey went out, and we did have a number of people attend that meeting. We are proposing a second public meeting as part of our final design of the project, in which we'll do some visualization and show them what the curbs will look like before we go out to bid on the job. That's part of our proposed work order to the city. So we are planning on a second time coming back to the public and showing them what this thing's gonna look like before it gets built.
And will you show them where those swales
Yes, sir.
are gonna be, so that you have it? Okay.
Yes.
Very good, thanks.
Mayor?
Unfortunately, those surveys, I know there was a survey on my block about speed humps and whatnot. I think they had about 50% turn in. The people that wanted them won the vote. They got the speed humps after they were put in. The other 50% all called me, hey, I didn't want them. I go, you should have voted. That's simple as that. What can I tell you?
Mr. Roy, or Alderman Wesley?
On number one, you're saying about elevation of the pond. Is that pond our responsibility or is it homeowners association?
The homeowners association does maintain that pond.
So, does the homeowners association know this proposal?
We talked to them when we were at the public meeting. We were in our early stages of design, so we didn't know for sure this is what we were going to do. We mentioned that this was one of the options that we were looking at.
Before the city looks at doing this as one, I would want a letter from that homeowners association, because it's kind of like on private property. That am I
Oh, you're
Am I looking at this the wrong way, or,
No, you're absolutely right.
I mean, it is, does it make,
You're correct. It's on private property. We would need some agreement from them to go in there and do this work. And I can tell you that there are some residents that do not want that pond lowered, but there are a lot of residents that want it lowered because they're being flooded. So,
well, in that case, again, I would throw it back to the homeowners association and let them deal with their homeowners association on it. And in that letter, I would like a no harmless agreement that I mean, we got a motion on there for one in there, right? We got a motion on the table?
Okay. All right, is the motioner agreed to add that? And then,
yes, I'll agree.
okay. Okay. Mr. Woods?
Along the lines of the pond, I know we discussed that the possibility exists because of maintenance issues that they may have to, they being the homeowners association, dredge that pond. Is that still a consideration? And that definitely also should be relayed and put together in the agreement, which is probably going to take quite a bit of legal crafting. Thanks.
Okay, I have a question. Raise a valid point here. So, my question is, we made a motion, we second the motion. My question now is that, number one, how could you proceed with that if we don't have the clearance with the homeowners associations up there? So my question is, where is this project going to fall now if we don't have an agreement now? Because I'll tell you honest, if that's the case, then what happens up in that area, we got to go back and you're going to have to redesign. If that homeowners association don't want to do anything with that pond, you guys might have to take 10 feet back and redesign a whole, to figure out the flooding issue up there. So I'm a little concerned about moving forward with this project until we get everything in line here now. I'm sorry, there's just too much going on now. I mean, Alderman Wesley brought up a valid point. It is a private pond. Okay? Mr. Mertens.
I wouldn't hesitate moving forward. This is a minor portion of the plan. This is just something, a piping issue. Doesn't have to be, engineered in great detail. You can move forward with the plan that's just incorporated into the scope as an idea, and that it wouldn't be completed when we do construction until we got sign off from the association.
Mayor, please.
Question to the engineers. The oversized storm sewers plus the reworking of some of the ditches and whatnot to basically control that area as it was. Lowering the pond was additional storage.
Yes,
Did I
sir.
understand that correctly last time?
Yes, sir. That is something that would make the project more effective in controlling stormwater out there. If the homeowners association chooses not to lower the pond, that's going to affect how much stormwater we can remove from the front lawns and from the street out there. It's a decision that they can make, but it's not necessary to the whole project. It is a component of the project. But the road still needs to get done. The water main still needs to get done. The storm sewer would still get designed. The pond would just make this whole project more effective, correct?
Mr. Woods.
So if we don't do the pond, there's zero net effect on the rest of the project. You don't have to change the road grades, elevations, number of swales, nothing.
The only thing that would need to change would be the ending outfall storm sewer elevation. We would have to either raise or lower that last piece of pipe, and whether or not that has water in it or not, depending on how they want to go with the design of the pond outfall. But the rest of the project should operate the same.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Coles.
I believe that they will, because there's too many houses get too close to being flooded down there, and I'd say they will give you all the paperwork that you need to do it. Because if they don't, there's no use even doing a project. And they're complaining about streets and flooding now, and if you don't bring the pond down, they don't allow the pond to be down, they're gonna be in trouble. Cause we're just gonna say, well, we wash our hands of it. And they ain't gonna do that.
Okay. I have a motion, I have a second on the floor
With the changes, right?
with the changes.
With
Do
the
you
no
have
har-
those?
With the hold harmless.
Could you read the motion back, please? If you,
Hold harmless agreement. Was a change, was it?
that was a
Was
change.
a change for, to go to the homeowners association for their approval with the city not holding, no liability or no harmless. I don't want something to come back to us.
So it was to do the curbs and gutters with the recommended curb size, and you also want them to look at options 1 and 3, correct?
Mhm.
And then have a hold harmless agreement from the homeowners association.
Regarding
Right. Regarding the
No,
pond,
one and-
regarding the pond.
1 and 3 is in there already.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, 1 and 3 is in there already, and you do
Right.
realize that the work order will proceed before the hold harmless agreement is acquired, so that's irrelevant to what we're talking about now. Go forward with the work order. Before we do anything, we will get the hold harmless if that's the route they want to go.
But
You have to.
I totally understand that. And believe me, I want to get this off the ground too, but again, we just want it in writing. Okay. That's all I want to do is make sure it's in writing.
That's what I'm telling you, though. Has
That's
nothing
fine.
to do with what we're talking about now. We'll get it in writing before we would do anything.
But we wanted a motion for we know we talked about it.
That's fine.
That's all I'm saying.
I'll remember too.
Okay. So, that is a motion, I have a second. I said I have a second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Am I hearing anything down there? Do a roll call vote then.
Alderman Woods?
Yes.
Alderman Lazara?
Yes.
Alderman Winger?
Yes.
Alderman Eugene Wesley?
Yes.
Alderman Shockey?
Yes.
Alderman Coles?
Yes.
Alderman Roy Wesley?
Yes.
Motion carries. Okay, our next item is report and recommendation, master flood study presentation. I will obtain a 5-minute break on this because I will tell you that I attended stormwater meeting last night and this will take a little time, so I will obtain a 5-minute motion at this time. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Here has left. Okay, report and recommendation, master flood study presentation. Go. You're on.
Thank you, Chairman. Mark and I are splitting up the presentation, and I'm going to kind of set the stage, tell you where we've been. Most of you already know where we've been. Mark is going to tell you where we're going to try and go, where we're going to recommend that we go with this. He'll be giving you the good news about alternatives and the, last night I used the term bad news, but the not so good news, which is the cost. The basis of this program is, as you recall from many months ago, we looked at a number of areas in town, targeted 13 total, the way it came up. We started with 10 and ended up with 13. However, in looking at all the areas, we wanted to maximize our study dollars. So what we're looking at is recommendations that will improve the conveyance system, storm sewers and overflow swales, to try and mitigate the conditions that have existed for sometimes up to 4 decades in town. Some of the areas that we're looking at and are not included in this study are areas either that are inundated by base floods from Salt Creek. So in other words, storm sewers will help those situations. Only buyouts or elevations will help those situations. And the other areas that we did not look at are areas that are inundated primarily due to sanitary sewer backups. And we'll go through the areas one at a time and to tell you which ones we studied, which ones are included in this study. Area 1 is an important one. The west side tributary, Georgetown, that's the area on the west side of town, moving from Mill Street and moving to the northeast, across the ComEd easement and across Dalewood and up Squaw Creek, across Route 19 and past the Target Jewel detention basin. Area 2 is the area north of Irving Park. It's a large area.
Alderman Roy Wesley.
Are we gonna, just to study, this is not telling you what we're gonna do or anything, correct?
Down the
This is
line.
just the background. This is just to tell you the areas that we looked at. Mark will go into the individual areas and the
costs.
improvements that are recommended in those areas. This is just the background to set the stage for Mark's improvements.
Okay, I
discussion.
don't know you. Okay, nice to meet you.
He's the stormwater engineer.
Okay.
Mark's
I'm
our
sorry.
stormwater group leader.
Okay, thank you.
So Area 1 is an area is one of the areas that we study. Area 2 is an area of primarily sanitary sewer backup. Sheet flow drainage does run west to east through this area as long as some pumps are running. Electricity is on. There isn't as many problems in this area. As far as I&I studies, as we know, RJN is doing the I&I study in town, and this could be an entire project in itself. We excluded it from this project because it's not a stormwater conveyance issue per se. Areas 3 and 9 are a couple of the areas that are inundated because of the floodplain of Salt Creek. Again, storm sewers are not an effective solution for these areas, so they were not included. Area 4, the woods, which is stuck between Central and The Woodside subdivision, again, another area that we met with staff several times to go over these different areas. We got a lot of their recommendations, and their recommendations eliminated the study area 4 of the woods as not being a problem or due to sanitary sewer backup. Areas 5 and 8 are areas that were important in accordance with the staff. Those have been studied, and Mark will elaborate on those as he gets into his presentation. Area 6 is the commercial area. You will recognize Benoris and Central, where Public Works is, and also the Creel Sievert Central area. There's a lot of grade fall from west to east. There's a detention pond and wetlands that is to the west of Creel. A lot of that area comes through those commercial buildings, causes flooding in the buildings, and there's a lot of ponding in the streets. Although it does, it rises quickly and falls away fairly quickly, but there is a definite constraint in the size of the conveyance system in that area. Area 7 is our Harvey, what we call the Harvey, well, it's the 4 streets, all the way from Addison, Harvey, Forest View, Edgebrook, Oakwood. That area is also an area that, as you know, has been studied by another engineering firm. There was a phase, what was considered a phase 1 study done